My friend, the greatest limitation you will ever face is not in your environment, not in your education, and not in your circumstances. The greatest limitation you will ever face is the one you accept in your own mind. The moment you decide that something is impossible, you place a lock on your potential. And once that lock is in place, opportunity walks past your door without knocking. The only limits that truly exist in your life are the ones you accept in your own mind. Before any wall appears in the outer world, it is first built in thought. A person does not fail because the goal is too large. They fail because they have already decided it is too large for them. The mind is the starting point of every victory and every defeat. When you believe something cannot be done, your mind immediately begins to search for reasons to prove you right. It gathers excuses, recalls past failures, and magnifies obstacles until they appear larger than your will. In this way, belief becomes a command to the subconscious, directing it either towards solutions or towards surrender. Most people inherit their limitations from the opinions of others. They are told what is practical, what is safe, and what is possible, and they accept those judgments without question. Over time, these borrowed beliefs become personal laws, and those laws quietly govern their actions. They attempt only what seems guaranteed and avoid anything that might stretch their ability. Yet growth never happens inside the circle of what feels comfortable. Every new level of achievement demands a new level of thinking, and every new level of thinking requires the courage to challenge old assumptions. The mind is a powerful instrument, but it does not judge truth from falsehood on its own. It accepts what is repeatedly impressed upon it, whether that message is strength or weakness. When a person constantly tells themselves they are limited, they train their mind to obey that instruction. Energy weakens, effort decreases, and ambition slowly fades. On the other hand, when a person decides that limitations are not facts but opinions, the mind begins to shift. It starts to ask different questions. Instead of seeing barriers, it looks for methods. Instead of expecting defeat, it prepares for progress. You cannot rise higher than the picture you hold of yourself. The self-image acts like a thermostat, regulating how far you believe you are allowed to go. Raise that image and your actions will naturally rise to meet it. Lower it and your efforts will quietly retreat. This is why two people can face the same circumstances and produce completely different results. One sees an impossible situation and withdraws. The other sees a difficult situation and advances. The difference is not in intelligence or opportunity, but in mental permission. To remove inner limits, you must first become aware of them. Listen to the language you use in your own thoughts. Phrases like, "I can't," "I'm not good enough," and "people like me don't succeed" are not truths. They are habits of thinking, and habits can be replaced. Each time you challenge such a thought, you weaken its control. Each time you act in spite of it, you prove it wrong. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the refusal to obey fear's command. When you refuse to accept mental boundaries, your behavior changes. You attempt what once felt unreachable. You persist where you once quit. You learn where you once avoided. Slowly, the world begins to respond to this new attitude because effort attracts opportunity and confidence attracts cooperation. The mind that once searched for limits now searches for ways forward, and that search reshapes character, discipline, and expectation, building a pattern of action that moves steadily toward higher ground, driven not by circumstance but by an inner decision to think beyond restriction and to operate as a person who does not negotiate with doubt, but trains thought to serve purpose and directs attention toward progress instead of retreat, allowing potential to unfold through consistent effort and deliberate belief rather than inherited fear and borrowed hesitation. The question you ask yourself determines the direction of your life. When you ask, "Why can't I?" you invite doubt to become your advisor. That question assumes defeat before effort has begun. It instructs the mind to search for reasons, justifications, and memories of failure. The mind obeys this instruction faithfully and produces evidence to support limitation. It recalls past mistakes, magnifies present difficulties, and predicts future disappointment. In this way, a single question quietly shapes your confidence, your behavior, and your results when you replace "Why can't I?" with "How can I?" You issue a different command to the same mind. You no longer ask for permission to quit, you ask for direction to proceed. The mind responds by seeking methods instead of excuses. It begins to explore alternatives, gather information, and imagine possibilities that were invisible under the weight of doubt. This shift does not remove obstacles, but it changes how you approach them. Instead of seeing them as proof that you should stop, you see them as problems that require strategy. Every advancement begins with a better question. A person who constantly asks, "Why can't I?" trains themselves to become an expert in their own limitations. A person who asks, "How can I?" trains themselves to become a student of solutions. One develops skill in retreat, the other develops skill in progress. The outer world may remain the same, but the inner approach transforms the experience. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable when broken into steps. What once seemed unreachable becomes a process rather than a mystery. The habit of asking empowering questions builds discipline in thinking. It teaches you to pause before surrendering and to analyze before withdrawing. When failure appears, the old question says, "Why can't I do this?" The new question says, "What must I learn from this?" One produces discouragement, the other produces instruction. One drains energy, the other redirects it. This is not a matter of positive thinking alone, it is a matter of practical thinking. Questions shape action, and action shapes outcome. Those who rise above ordinary results do not possess fewer problems than others. They possess a different anti-mental posture toward problems. They assume that an answer exists, even if they cannot yet see it. That assumption keeps them moving while others remain frozen. Progress is rarely the result of sudden brilliance, it is more often the result of persistent inquiry. The person who keeps asking how eventually discovers a way, not because the path was easy, but because the search was constant. The shift from "why can't I" to "how can I" also changes how you relate to fear. Fear thrives on unanswered questions about ability and worth. It weakens when confronted with practical tasks. When you ask, "How can I improve?" fear is forced to step aside while you gather skills. When you ask, "How can I begin?" fear loses its grip because movement replaces hesitation. Each small answer becomes a building block of confidence, and each action confirms that progress is possible. Over time, this pattern reshapes identity. You no longer see yourself as a person blocked by circumstances, but as a person guided by methods. You stop waiting for ideal conditions and start working with available resources. You become more attentive, more adaptable, and more willing to adjust. The question, "How can I?" creates momentum, and momentum creates belief. Belief then strengthens effort, and effort strengthens results, forming a cycle that feeds itself through curiosity, persistence, and the refusal to accept helplessness as a final explanation, keeping the mind engaged in constructive direction and the will focused on advancement rather than on retreat or resignation. Desire becomes powerful only when it is supported by action. Many people wish for opportunity, but wishing alone does not create movement. Opportunity responds to effort, not to intention without execution. A goal that remains only in thought is a dream, but a goal that is acted upon becomes a direction. When desire is strong enough to push you into consistent effort, it begins to attract circumstances that match that effort. The world does not rearrange itself for those who wait, it responds to those who work. Action gives form to belief. Without action, belief remains an idea with no weight in reality. The smallest step taken toward a goal is more valuable than the largest plan left untouched. Action signals seriousness to the mind and to the environment. It tells the subconscious that the desire is not temporary, and it tells the world that preparation is in progress. This is how opportunity begins to take shape. It appears first as information, as a chance meeting, or as a new awareness that was previously unnoticed. Desire without action weakens over time. It becomes frustration instead of fuel. But desire expressed through effort becomes energy. Each step taken strengthens commitment, and each effort invested deepens focus. The mind begins to organize itself around the objective, filtering distractions and highlighting useful paths. What once seemed random becomes meaningful because attention has been trained to recognize relevance. Opportunity is rarely a single dramatic event. It is usually a series of small openings that reveal themselves to those who are prepared to see them. Preparation is not passive. It is the daily discipline of improving skill, increasing knowledge, and refining purpose. When desire pushes a person to practice instead of postpone, to learn instead of avoid, and to act instead of hesitate, it creates a readiness that invites opportunity to connect with effort. Those who complain that opportunity never comes often confuse waiting with preparation. They expect results without process and rewards without contribution. Yet every door that opens does so in response to a knock. The knock is made through action. Even failure becomes useful when desire is sincere, because failure provides information. It reveals weaknesses to be strengthened and strategies to be adjusted. In this way, action turns mistakes into instruction and keeps progress alive even in defeat. Desire that is not backed by action becomes emotional noise. It produces talk instead of results and hope instead of movement. But desire joined with effort becomes a force that reshapes habits. It changes how time is used and how priorities are chosen. The person who acts on desire does not wait for perfect conditions. They begin with what they have. They understand that progress creates clarity, not the other way around. When action is guided by a clear desire, it becomes persistent. It does not stop at the first obstacle because the goal remains vivid in the mind. This persistence is what draws cooperation from others. People respond to visible effort more than to spoken intention. They offer assistance, advice, and access when they see consistency. In this way, opportunity is not only found, it is formed through visible commitment. Desire alone can imagine success, but action builds the bridge toward it. Each effort becomes proof that movement is possible. Each attempt strengthens the belief that advancement can be earned. Over time, this pattern of desire expressed through work creates a chain reaction in which confidence feeds effort and effort feeds opportunity, forming a cycle that carries the individual forward through discipline and awareness rather than through chance or idle wishing, keeping purpose alive through constant motion and directing ambition into tangible paths of growth and practical achievement. Temporary defeat is not permanent failure unless you accept it as such. A setback is only an event, not a verdict. It does not define ability, and it does not determine destiny. It simply reveals that a certain method did not work at a certain time. When defeat is treated as final, the mind closes its doors to further effort. But when defeat is treated as temporary, the mind remains open to adjustment, learning, and renewed action. Most people fear failure because they confuse it with loss of worth. They believe that if an attempt does not succeed, something must be wrong with them. This belief causes them to retreat after the first disappointment. Yet progress in any field has always been built upon repeated attempts, not perfect ones. Each mistake carries information. It exposes weak points, highlights missing skills, and forces a change in approach. Defeat becomes destructive only when its lesson is ignored. The difference between those who rise and those who remain stuck is not the absence of failure, but the response to it. One person sees defeat as proof that the journey should end. Another sees it as proof that the strategy must change. The event is the same, but the interpretation is different. Interpretation controls emotion, and emotion controls action. When defeat is interpreted as temporary, it produces determination. When it is interpreted as permanent, it produces resignation. Every achievement of value has passed through resistance. Obstacles test desire and refine purpose. They reveal whether a goal is a passing wish or a serious intention. When effort meets opposition, character is shaped. Patience is developed. Discipline is strengthened. The struggle itself becomes a training ground for greater responsibility and higher achievement. Defeat also exposes the inner conversation. It brings hidden doubts to the surface. Thoughts such as "I am not capable" or "this is not for me" appear more loudly after disappointment. These thoughts are not facts, they are reactions. When they are challenged, their power weakens. When they are obeyed, they become habits. Growth begins when a person refuses to let a single experience speak for an entire future. Temporary defeat teaches timing as well as technique. Some goals fail not because they are wrong, but because the moment is not yet right. Preparation may be incomplete. Knowledge may be lacking. Support may be missing. These conditions are not permanent unless effort stops. With continued action, missing elements can be added and weaknesses can be strengthened. Those who succeed understand that progress is not a straight line. It moves forward through turns, pauses, and corrections. Each delay shapes better judgment. Each loss sharpens awareness. Each challenge builds endurance. Over time, the person who persists becomes stronger than the problem that once stopped them. When defeat is seen as temporary, it no longer destroys confidence. It redirects it. It encourages reflection instead of retreat. It invites new plans instead of final decisions. In this way, failure becomes a guide rather than an enemy. It points toward improvement rather than toward surrender. The mind that accepts defeat as permanent gives up its authority to shape outcomes. The mind that accepts defeat as temporary retains control. It remains flexible. It remains alert. It remains willing to act again. This attitude transforms hardship into instruction and disappointment into direction, allowing effort to continue with greater awareness, stronger purpose, and a deeper understanding of what must be done differently next time to move closer to the desired result rather than farther from it. Belief, persistence, and discipline are the three forces that shape destiny. Belief sets the direction, persistence supplies the movement, and discipline maintains the path. When these three are aligned, life begins to move with purpose instead of chance. Without belief, effort feels empty. Without persistence, belief fades. Without discipline, both scatter into disorder. Together, they create a pattern of behavior that steadily builds results over time. Belief is the acceptance of a future before it becomes visible. It is the inner decision that something can be achieved, even when evidence has not yet appeared. This decision influences thought, and thought influences action. A person who believes in their objective walks differently, speaks differently, and chooses differently. Their attention becomes fixed on progress rather than on limitation. Belief does not remove difficulty, but it gives difficulty a reason to be faced. Persistence is the refusal to abandon an aim because of delay or discomfort. It is the quality that keeps effort alive after enthusiasm has weakened. The beginning of any journey is fueled by excitement, but the middle is sustained by persistence. This quality separates those who try from those who continue. Each repeated attempt strengthens endurance and reduces fear. What once felt impossible becomes familiar through repetition. Persistence trains the mind to expect improvement instead of retreat. Discipline is the structure that guides action when emotion is unreliable. It is the habit of doing what must be done whether it feels pleasant or not. Discipline converts intention into routine. It protects time, regulates energy, and directs focus. Without discipline, goals remain vulnerable to distraction. With discipline, small daily efforts accumulate into visible progress. Discipline is not punishment, it is order applied to desire. When belief, persistence, and discipline work together, they form a cycle. Belief inspires action. Persistence keeps action alive. Discipline shapes action into a consistent pattern. This pattern becomes character. Character then influences opportunity. People respond to reliability. They trust effort that continues. They support those who demonstrate commitment through conduct rather than through promise. Destiny is not an accident. It is the product of repeated choices. Each choice strengthens or weakens these three qualities. A decision to think positively strengthens belief. A decision to try again strengthens persistence. A decision to work when comfort calls strengthens discipline. Over time, these decisions create a direction that feels natural because it has been practiced. Fear loses influence in the presence of these qualities. Belief counters doubt by focusing on possible. Persistence weakens fear by exposing it repeatedly. Discipline limits fear's effect by replacing hesitation with routine. The person who develops these traits does not wait for perfect conditions. They create conditions through preparation and steady work. Obstacles do not disappear for such a person, but their meaning changes. Challenges become tests of alignment rather than signs of failure. Each test measures whether belief remains firm, whether persistence remains active, and whether discipline remains steady. The response to these tests determines the level of growth achieved. When these three qualities are cultivated, effort gains direction and time gains value. Days are no longer wasted in uncertainty but invested in purpose. Life begins to reflect intention rather than impulse. In this way, destiny is shaped not by sudden events but by steady habits, not by luck but by design, not by what is hoped for but by what is practiced consistently, through thought, action, and resolve over a long period of conscious effort and self-direction.